Okay, the woolly bugger. I'm starting with a TMC 5263 hook. I'm going to be using 6/0 thread. This is a size 8. I'm going to begin by attaching my thread to the hook. Simply drape the thread over the hook shank and hold the tag end with your opposite hand and wrap the thread back over itself to start the thread. Clip off your tag end and move the thread to the rear. And you want to create a thread base on the hook shank like I've done here to help all your materials stick to the hook shank. Otherwise the hook shank's very slippery and all your materials can slide off really easy if you don't get this good thread base here. For the tail I'm going to be using a marabou blood quill plume. They come strung and you can just pull them out of the string. And you want to select one that's got some good fluff. And you can see this one's got a lot of fluff to it, a lot of movement. So simply take your quill, run your fingers over it so it all comes to a point back here. Switch your hands, and now you've got your tail fibers ready to go. And you want to measure this to about the length of the hook shank. So I'm going to simply lay it across the top of the hook shank. I can pull it back to where I want it, and then transfer it back to the bend of the hook. I'm going to switch hands. I'm going to pinch it, and I'm going to tie it on. Now when I clip this excess, I'm going to actually clip it up a little ways to just behind the eye of the hook. I'm going to wrap all of this down. Like that. And what that does is anytime you add material, you create a bigger profile. And so if I were to clip this back here, then I would have a drop off on my hook, and when I wrap my body you'd be able to see it thick in the back, and then you'd be able to see it get really skinny in the body, and it's just not that aesthetically pleasing. And then for my rib, I'm going to take some wire. This is silver. You can use copper, you can use whatever color you want. They come in a bunch of different colors. This is size brassy, BR. I'm going to clip off about 6 inches. I'm going to lay it across the back of the hook. And I'm going to tie it on. I'm going to tie it about halfway up. And I've got a little excess here. I'm going to fold that back over itself and then wrap back towards the back of the hook where everything lines up here. And the reason I do that is this wire is very slippery. There's no little fibers like the marabou that your thread can grab onto to hold it there. So a lot of times if you don't double it back over and tie it over itself, you can pull it and it'll slip right out of your thread. And usually when they find that out is when it comes time at the end of the fly to wrap it forward. You've already got your body on and it slips out. You're kind of stuck. There's not a whole lot you can do but start over. So for my body, I'm going to use chenille size medium. And I'm going to clip off another 6 inches or so. And I'm going to just take my thumb and my forefinger and I'm going to strip off these end fibers. And so I've got my string core and then the actual chenille. When I tie it in, I'm going to tie it in right where the chenille starts. And I tie down my core there. And now I'm going to move up my thread to just behind the eye of the hook. You want to leave a little bit of room there to tie everything down. And on my chenille, I'm just going to wrap. And one thing I meant to say earlier is you always want to wrap generally always want to wrap away from you. When I tie this off, I'm going to pull it straight up. I'm just going to make a couple wraps behind it, and then I can let it go and secure it. And clip it off as close as you can. And I always make a couple wraps just for good measure to make sure it's going to stay. Now it's time for my saddle hackle. Full saddles are pretty hard to get now, so you have to buy strung saddle or woolly bugger hackle. It's all strung. And it'll come with all this fluffy stuff on the bottom. What you want to do is you want to, where that fluff stops and the actual fibers start, you just want to take your thumb and your forefinger and peel them off like that, to where it's even on both sides. And you want your hackle, when you put it on your hook, you want it to extend past the actual point of the hook. You can kind of see this is about a gap and a half, and that's about perfect for this fly. And every feather's got a natural concave. It'll either go down or you can flip it over and it wants to kind of come up. If you want the fibers to swoop to the rear of the fly, like we do in the woolly bugger, tie it to where it's concave going down. So I'm just going to set it on the top of the hook, put my finger on it, and make a couple wraps. And give it a good little yank to make sure it's going to stay there for you. Clip off the stem and start wrapping. I like to make 2 full wraps in the very front and then angle it and palmer it towards the rear. And you see it's spaced out evenly. It's not real heavy, and I've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, I've got 5 turns for the whole length of the body. You don't want it real thick, otherwise it's just going to float on the surface. Now grab your copper wire where you still have the hackle in hand and wrap that in the front going towards the eye, and that'll lock down the hackle and it creates a very durable fly. Now when you get to the front, I'm just going to pull all my fibers back and I'm going to tie off my wire. And I'm going to clip it and leave just a little bit so I can bend that back and tie back over it. And now the excess hackle we have on the rear here, we can just clip off. Now for the end knot, on the back of your bodkin there's a half hitch tool. I'm going to pull down my thread, and I'm going to take my half hitch tool, lay it across my thread, and then bring 1 wrap of thread behind it, move it up to the eye, and just give it a pull. And that wraps the thread over itself. So you have a couple options. You can do that 3 or 4 times, and then make sure you cement it, and that'll complete the fly. Or you can do a whip finish. And the whip finish is a much stronger knot. When you take this tool, and we're going to learn about this in class, but you've got a notch here and a notch there. You want to put the thread in the front notch first, put in the second notch, let it go, hold the thread next to the hook, and wrap it over itself 4 or 5 times, and then pop it off the bottom notch, and then pull your bobbin and give it a little tightener. Clip your thread, and there you have your completed woolly bugger.